In the frigid depths of the forests north of Ontario, where the silence is so absolute you can almost hear the sound of your own breathing, there exists a small community that few dare to mention: Mallow Creek. For decades, residents and travelers alike have reported strange apparitions and events that defy all logic or rational explanation. Stories whispered around campfires and quickly hushed, as if the very frozen air were afraid to let these tales spread. It's a place where nature seems to hoard ancient secrets, guarded by centuries-old trees and an ever-clouded sky that never quite allows sunlight to pass through comfortably. One October night, when the cold already bit the skin with merciless ferocity, a group of 4 young adventurers decided to explore an abandoned trail near Mallow Creek. They weren't locals, and few knew exactly why they had chosen such an isolated place to spend the weekend. There was a mystery, a legend that drew curious youths, the story of an old cabin at the heart of the forest, where, it is said, a man driven mad committed heinous acts before disappearing without a trace. Lucas, a 24-year-old anthropology student, led the group, eager to document any trace of local culture. By his side were Clara, a 28-year-old nurse, always calm and level-headed; Jonas, a 22-year-old photographer obsessed with capturing supernatural images; and Marcelo, a 25-year-old amateur guide who knew some of the region's trails. At dusk, as they progressed between moss-covered logs and gnarled roots, a mounting sense of unease began to overtake them. The trees seemed to close in, and the wind carried a strange, almost indecipherable whisper that seemed to call their names, as if extending a sinister invitation. Lucas, ever the skeptic, tried to convince the group to press on, despite the unmistakable signs they were encroaching on a territory not meant for visitors. It wasn't long before they found the cabin, an old wooden structure draped in ivy, its windows shattered and its half-open door creaking in the wind. Inside, the air was heavy, as if it had absorbed years of suffering and terror. Crossing the threshold, something changed. The darkness seemed alive, dense, pulsating. In the middle of the room, among broken furniture and scattered remains, they found symbols scrawled on the walls in a dark pigment reminiscent of coagulated blood. Jonas, fascinated, snapped photos without noticing that a shadow behind him moved subtly, silently, like a predator. Clara struggled to keep calm, but her eyes betrayed her rising fear. Marcelo, his survival instinct on high alert, felt a presence watching them, and goosebumps prickled his skin as if dozens of invisible needles pierced his back. Tension mounted by the minute, and then a brutal crash echoed from upstairs. Something or someone was up there. Trying to muster their courage, they climbed the creaking stairs and found an empty room, except for an old dusty mirror that reflected more than just their images. It was at that moment Clara felt an icy touch on the nape of her neck, and turning around saw a deformed, eyeless face that instantly vanished. Screams cut through the air as Jonas and Marcelo tried to flee the cabin, but the door now seemed sealed by some invisible force. Lucas, desperate, tried to break a window when out of nowhere a spectral figure appeared, its body covered with open wounds and bleeding eyes, advancing toward him. The flashlights flickered out and chaos reigned, leaving behind only echoes of their screams lost in the night, while the forest remained impassive, a mute witness to the carnage. When morning finally arrived, a heavy silence hung over the forest surrounding the Mallow Creek cabin. None of the youngsters returned to the trail, nor was any trace of them ever found, only bloodstains that abruptly vanished among the trees, as if something or someone had dragged them off into the eternal shadows of the forest. Locals shunned the area with a palpable fear, and after weeks of searching, the police found only the mutilated bodies of Jonas and Marcelo, hanging by invisible threads in the tree canopies, their faces frozen in expressions of pure terror. Clara and Lucas were never found, and their absence became part of the dark legend now enveloping Mallow Creek. The story spread quickly, and no one dared venture into that region anymore. But despite the warnings, other groups still tried to unravel the mystery, drawn by the same macabre fascination that had ensnared the four young explorers. On one such expedition, a pair of French researchers, Camille and Etienne, decided to camp near the cabin, equipped with high-tech gear to capture paranormal phenomena. Camille, a 27-year-old linguistics expert, and Etienne, a 31-year-old biologist, hoped to record voices and images that would prove the supernatural real. In the first hours, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Only the distant wind and the quick fall of darkness with dusk. But as they crossed the trail leading to the cabin, an unseen presence set their nerves on edge. The cameras caught strange movements, shadows not cast by any visible being, and indecipherable whispers that sounded like words in long-dead languages. Camille tried to decipher some symbols carved into nearby stones, and a sense of profound despair overwhelmed them. On an especially cold night, Etienne vanished without a trace, and Camille spent hours calling for him in the darkness until a spectral shape emerged before her, its eyes hollow, its mouth gaping in a silent scream. The entity tried to communicate, but its words were like claws tearing through Camille's mind, leaving her in a near unbearable state of madness. The next day, Camille was found wandering the woods, completely disoriented, muttering names and reciting phrases in an ancient tongue no one there could understand. She survived, but carried with her an invisible mark. The horror of that place now lived inside her. And this is where I want you to become part of the story. Have you ever felt something inexplicable, a strange presence, or even had a nightmare more real than life itself? Leave your account in the comments below. I want to know, what was the scariest moment you've ever lived, or something you still can't explain? Share your experience with us and become a part of the community that faces fear head-on. Oh, and if you're enjoying this plunge into the unknown, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories we'll unravel together. Here the supernatural finds a voice, and every story is a window into the real horror that stalks our world. After Camille's collapse, the forest in Mallow Creek seemed even more impenetrable, as if the very air had become heavy with some ancient malevolence. It was there, amid trees whispering forbidden secrets, that a group of relic hunters ventured, driven by greed and the lure of fame. Led by Ricardo, a 42-year-old amateur archaeologist, they believed the abandoned cabin held valuable artifacts, objects once belonging to a cult forgotten for centuries, whose rituals involved human sacrifices to open gateways between worlds. Ignoring all warnings and dark tales, they crossed into the cursed territory, unaware they were about to awaken horrors far beyond what they could withstand. The first days of searching seemed fruitless, but soon they began to find symbols etched into stones, bones scattered on the ground, and signs of ancient rituals, circles drawn with dried blood and melted candles. One by one, the group members felt a presence silently stalking them. At night, footsteps, distant voices, and strangled screams echoed in the woods, tension growing like an open wound. Yet Ricardo, obsessed, pressed on, convinced he was close to a discovery that would change history forever. Then the nightmares began. Each of them started dreaming of dark figures with deep black eyes, whispering promises of power in exchange for their souls. One of the hunters, a former soldier named Lucas, woke in terror after feeling something icy touch his neck. The next day, he found deep claw-like marks on his arms. His behavior changed drastically. He became aggressive, paranoid, as if an invisible force had seized his mind. The situation deteriorated quickly. Ricardo vanished mysteriously after exploring the cabin, leaving behind a blood-stained diary covered in fragmented phrases and disturbing drawings. Chaos gripped the group. Arguments, fear, and the constant feeling of being hunted by something not of this world. When they tried to escape, they realized the forest seemed to close in around them. The paths changed, the trees moved, as if nature itself conspired against them. By the fourth day, only 3 remained. Among them was Lara, a 33-year-old investigative journalist recording everything on her voice recorder. Through trembling words, she described what she saw: shadows coalescing into grotesque forms, figures that passed by leaving a trail of icy chill, and finally the horrific sight of Lucas's mutilated body hanging from a tree, eyes locked in. A stare of absolute terror. Lara tried to run, but reaching the trail, felt invisible hands grab her ankles, pulling her to the ground as a voice whispered they would never let her leave. This story, friends, is not just a spine-chilling tale, it's a warning. Sometimes curiosity can be fatal, and the desire for the unknown opens doors that should stay forever closed. If a mystery has ever beckoned too strongly, think twice before delving deeper, for the price may be far too high. Now I want to know, if you had to confront one of these horrors, how would you react? Do you think you could keep your sanity, or would you succumb to fear? Leave your thoughts in the comments and share which supernatural tale has marked you the most. Your participation is crucial for us to understand together what really lies beyond the veil of the ordinary. And don't forget, if you're enjoying this dark content and want more chilling accounts, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you won't miss a thing. Here, every story is an invitation to face your deepest fears and discover that sometimes terror is closer than we imagine. Lara barely managed to tear free from the invisible force pulling her down, but her desperation and an inexplicable burst of strength helped her break its cold grip. She ran without looking back, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might explode. Shadows around her twisted like serpents in some macabre dance, and the stillness of the forest was cut only by whispers promising a cruel end. When she finally reached a clearing, she thought she had escaped, only to find something even more terrifying. A shallow grave, open, with bones and remains that looked too fresh to belong to anyone from long ago. It was there that Lara realized she was more than prey. They were up against an ancient entity, a living curse that required sacrifices to feed and grow. The cult that left those symbols was just the tip of the iceberg, and the forest was a bridge between our world and a dimension of pure darkness and pain. She tried to call the outside world, but her devices wouldn't work. The signal simply disappeared. As soon as she entered that area, isolated and gripped by fear, Lara knew her time was running out. In the days that followed, Lara witnessed the final downfall of the group. Each death was more brutal than the last. Marcos, the biologist, was found with his body torn apart, claw marks, and a frozen grin of horror on his face. Ina, the doctor, went mad and hurled herself into a frozen river, her mind shattered by the voices that haunted her. In the end, only Lara remained. In a desperate escape, she stumbled into a secret passage inside the cabin, a narrow tunnel leading underground, where she found a chamber with blood-stained walls and piled bones, almost like an altar. There, in the sepulchral silence, Lara felt what can only be described as the presence of pure evil. A massive shadow, enveloped in dark mist, rose before her, an entity that seemed to consume all light. She tried to hide, to pray, to scream, but nothing worked. The horror overwhelmed her. Her final thoughts were of regret for not heeding the warnings, for entering that defiled forest, and for dragging others into tragedy. The entity didn't kill her directly. Knowing her soul was damned was enough for her to become part of the darkness, a scream trapped in the eternity of that cursed place. The tale of Mallow Creek is just one of many scattered around the world, places where the veil between our world and the unknown grows thin and dangerous. It reminds us that terror isn't just in the monsters we can see or hear, but in invisible forces that silently crush us. The deepest horror lies in loneliness, despair, and the unknown that lurks behind doors we should never open. And no matter how hard we try to ignore the warnings, they are always there, waiting patiently to swallow the next soul brave enough to defy the forbidden. If you were in this situation, could you keep your calm and try to escape? Or would you let panic take over? Tell me in the comments the scariest moment you've ever lived, whether in reality or in a dream, and how you managed to overcome fear. Here, every story helps disarm the horrors that surround us, and sharing these experiences strengthens our community. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now's the time to join our group of fearless explorers of dread. Hit the bell so you won't miss our next chilling stories. This space is for those brave enough to face the unknown and survive to tell the tale, and I want you with me on this journey. The silence that followed the presence of that colossal shadow seemed to herald ultimate death. But what happened next was even more disturbing. Lara was never seen again, and when the first police agents entered the Mallow Creek forest, days after her disappearance, they found only traces of a frantic struggle. Marks in the earth, torn scraps of clothing, and an oppressive atmosphere that made the air feel denser, almost suffocating. The bodies of the other group members were never recovered, as if the forest had swallowed them forever, leaving behind only the echo of their final agonies. From then on, people in the area avoided that spot, speaking in whispers of ancient curses and vengeful spirits guarding old secrets. Some claim to have seen strange lights or heard piercing cries at night from the woods, while others report their cameras or phones stop working as soon as they approach the forbidden clearing. Mallow Creek became an urban legend, but the real stories behind it tell of a horror that goes beyond imagination. Stories like this teach us that fear lies not just in the monsters we can see, but in invisible forces that can silently crush us. The deepest terror is found in solitude, despair, and the unknown that lurks behind the door we were never meant to open. No matter how much we try to ignore these signals, they continue to wait, patiently, ready to swallow the next brave soul. Now that you've made it this far, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your courage in facing such a dark and terrifying tale. If this video stirred something in you, made your heart race, or even taught you something about the limits of fear, be sure to subscribe to the channel so we can journey together through the most disturbing stories the world has to offer. Here, your participation is essential. Tell your story, share your own encounters with the supernatural, or let us know what you felt watching this video. Let's build a strong community where respect and courage unite us to confront the darkest things out there. In the end, we all carry a little fear inside us, and knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. So leave your comment, like if you enjoyed the story, and share it with that friend who loves a good scare. I promise the next journey will be even more intense. Until then, take care, and remember, sometimes the greatest danger is exactly where you least expect it.